Austin, you did not share the link again.
I'll do it now.
Okay.
The meeting has to start for.
Yeah.
we are implementing, or that we plan to implement in the pipeline, Ondo related to integrated land use management. Can you please introduce yourself? That you are here.
Yes. Sorry to fully the national consultant.
It's been also working a lot in the state issues of livestock. Perhaps we can
Yes,
inside.
thank you. Already introduced me. My name is Hamid Buloki. When is I lead at the state. Presenting as a government gets the senior special assistant to the government and agribusiness. That's what I
Good afternoon. Many issues there. I work with investments that support, agribusiness states as well.
My name is Bola.
Okay, welcome. Yes. Perhaps if you like to start.
Thank you, for letting me once again recognize you, the FAO country representative here in Nigeria, Mr. Kafio, and Salvador Stella, the representative afternoon, and other members of the team. Let me first of all convey Mr. Governor's apology for not being here personally himself. It has been this promise sometimes that make a visit after your visit to our state of the state. We have to reciprocate by paying a visit to your office. But this meeting has been scheduled for all the important security matters. We have this 9-minute change of movement. Has to personally attend to some other issue. And that they have fixed, so yes, it's been starting. So it's not out of disregard or disregard that is not here. So please accept his apology. Basically, we want to appreciate you and your team, the organization, for your large visit for deeply appreciated. And also the inclusion of Ondo State in the GEF Fund, the Global Development Fund, and the governor express gratitude to your organization and those of you that are behind the operations. We express deep appreciation for the project. And then the feedlot training, the first phase that we had listed as well. I want to appreciate you for that, because that has helped us a lot. In fact, during the first 100 days, the second time of administration, we're able to actually commission project that direction. So the training has started yielding, we started executing. So we have, but that does not mean you won't come and start your pilot scheme for us. They say you want, you put in place by yourself. Yeah, we received the knowledge, the training, but we are going ahead to start something. So we are still going to ask you to help us, start your own pilot, feedlot scheme for us. Because the training you gave to us, the content was so rich, and we learned a lot, and the people are still yearning for more. So So we're looking for the second phase of that because it's been very, very supportive. And then we look at the next phase that we include the hydroponics on how to really prepare the mill for this, for the how to so that we can have a good yield at the end of the day. So that is that. But having said that, we're also looking at other areas where you can still help us, and also like the completion of the training, like I said, second phase, and being able to also facilitate how we can get funding for a lot of our other agricultural projects that help us in our state. Because it's of interest to you that agri and agribusiness is one of the major drive of this present administration. But we believe that for those states being an agrarian state, we need to do more. So we used to, and we are still anyway, the highest producer of cocoa in Nigeria. We are still occupying that position, but we can still do better because we know that other small African countries, has taken over in terms of the percentage of the contribution from Africa. And now Nigeria is taking maybe about third or fourth position, and we used to be number one. And most of the cocoa is coming from Ondo State. So we looking for collaboration and support, access to funds and funding to support our livestock. And if you can, we can put it right on your back to have access to wider credit, both internationally and locally with Federal Ministry of Agri. Because when you lay your voice to some of these things on our behalf, you might be able to have a faster route to access some of these funds. So we are looking up to you for that. Then the area of branching from apart from the field. Branching, we're interested in these. We want a station whereby we have a ranch in large scale, because we're ready to provide the land, that will involve land areas, but we have it. We have it for the state. So that we can also we need collaboration for other schemes like sericulture. It's another area we need support from the FAO. Then in the areas of aquaculture, floating cage fish rearing system. Not started is the way that we're looking at it. If there's any support we can get from you, this area. Now we're planting and irrigation is another area. Need this to be able to support our farmlands irrigation. So these other general areas, you know better than us, but these are the ones we are looking at right now. But any other area, as time goes on, that we can partner together, we can support us. We are very open because we want a good revolution in the state. That make us to take our right position, both locally and internationally. That's what we're here. I said to thank you and I appreciate for all that you're doing. I have to look for other areas.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for these kind words, first of all, to us. We feel privileged to be working with you in partnership because we believe in partnership as well. There's no way you can be able to make any progress unless we work in partnership. We also appreciate the areas that you have mentioned. All these areas are within FAO's mandate as far as food and agriculture is concerned. And I just want to reiterate again what I said some time back, that we are very ready to collaborate with Ondo State because of exactly what you have pointed out with regard to the great potential that exists in this state. About business, we talk about using agriculture to fight unemployment, to make meaningful contribution to the economy. Sustainable natural resource management, everything is there. As you rightly point out, we just need to see how to further organize this a little better, structure the support that we can be able to offer, and what opportunities for others as well to get engaged. Now, for us, again, I want also to mention that we are a technical agency. As much as possible, our work and our contribution will be in the technical areas, because that's who we are. We are a specialized agency of the United Nations, providing technical assistance in all areas of agriculture. And for us to do that, of course, we too, as well, therefore require resources to be able to offer that assistance. So there are areas that I realize, and I think rightly pointed out already, what we are doing, especially in the cocoa aspect. Now, on the cocoa side of things, the entry point that we have with regard to this global environment facility financing that is about to come. Where are we on this? If you can just let us know where we are on this particular point.
As you rightly mentioned, state. So the good news is that we're able to submit the expert then according to the paper set out so the cotton feedback is a private sector, so which was actually highlighted that was well integrated. Then during the stakeholder engagement we had state level, I think it's only that on the yes, which could also be partner private sector as well as creating to the since the secretariat just information private sector. So with this, we are hopeful that we will be able to get partners and let's say people that are selected as organize events to see how we can further previous discussion about private sector. So this is the point we have. Talking maybe for feedback is that the projects aligned to total priorities of the jail, and then we expect that same one we should have resources to make people so that actually we can start from January 2020.
So that particular project takes the course of sustainable practices, managing these resources, particularly mindful that there's quite a lot of deforestation that goes on in the process of producing cocoa or oil palm. And so how can we ensure that we integrate sustainable practices in the way we produce cocoa or the way we produce oil palm? It takes that direction so much. And that's why the funding is coming from the global environment facility, from the environmental side of things. I take your point as well of making cocoa, take its rightful place in the state and in the country and in the region. Now, to do that, we also need to consider other areas of again, our FAO technical support in terms of developing cocoa as a value chain, managing it in such a way that it can meaningfully contribute economically. And that is outside the remit of this particular project. But we have, again, other partnerships that we create as a with other UN entities to be able to support especially value chain development. We have this ongoing global program with the UNIDO, which we call the 3ADI. 3ADI, the 3A is the agriculture processing, the agribusiness, 3A is development initiative. The ADI plus is a key, we call it actually a flagship of our cooperation. The idea here is that both of us bring our, even you need as a technical agency, together, when we bring our technical expertise, we are able also to attract other financing institutions, to be able to work on particular value chain. That one works on value chains. And value chain like cocoa is key. It's something that we can take up as a discussion our side with you to see within the umbrella of that how can we support. And we've been having this discussion with the Lagos state again, because they too want to develop the coconut now. So within that umbrella program, we need to kind of see how that could, but we can initiate that discussion. So Ondo will be very so there are opportunities again there for us to be able to follow. Now, you also mentioned, I think, something that is very important that I've read that this year has been widely following up on the Feedlot project. Our understanding of that project was that the state was setting it up as a demonstration with a view actually upscaling it within the state. So we use this as good practice for learning and also for seeing how best it can be replicated all over the state. And we responded to the request because we received a formal letter from the governor in this particular issue. And one of our personnel that has been working with the relevant technical staff from the state to ensure that this happens. And we asked him to actually continue doing this until such a time when we are happy with all the necessary setup, the infrastructure in place, to ensure that now this is ready for replication. But for us to do that, definitely, of course, we also look at the sustainability aspects of things. And we look also at the broader issues around the livestock sector, both in the state but also in the country. And try to see, okay, this is one model that can be used to sedentarize. What are the other models that are existing to ensure inclusion of various stakeholders within this system? How sustainable is that? How can we consistently provide our technical assistance to the state in such a way that these good practices actually replicated and continue on their own in the state. That requires that we have a kind of long-term program developed and executed jointly with you. As you recall, in the meeting that we had in Ondo, the governor, I indicated that for us, what we are looking at is that the state is able to start with, to provide resources to be able to do these kinds of things, whether in the budget of the ministry or wherever it is, anyway, the resources from your side. Basically, for us, what we do and what we request is that we can set up and design a program based, of course, so far what we have done. But that program needs to be financed by the state through FAO. And we call that the Unilateral Trust Fund. And my colleagues were telling me already that this discussion is ongoing. Special advisor to the governor to set up this Unilateral Trust Fund agreement. And then resources can flow. I mean, there will not be, I wouldn't say that there are enough resources to be able to operationalize this, but whichever resources there will be a really good start and a good basis for us to be able to attract others and say, actually, there's something good happening. Why don't you come so that we follow up together? That's one approach that we are trying to do. But we have this Unilateral Trust Fund agreement set up with FAO and the Ondo state on that particular issue. We can be able to replicate that upscale as much as we can. But as I said, we can also explore other areas on this particular subject. We have the experts. There's a minute just to say something about that at some point. But for now, I think also one of the things you pointed out is how can we facilitate get funding? Because the resources within the state will not be that they will deal with what is going to so we realistically put agriculture at the center and core of the support that we require. We're talking about agriculture, very important areas. We're talking about ranching, we're talking about opportunities for aquaculture, irrigation, all these require a lot of resources. Now, we in FAO, we have also been involved in another initiative called hand-in-hand initiative. The hand-in-hand initiative is largely an initiative that brings partnerships at the core of any intervention that the FAO wants to do. And here we are actually working with the federal level. We've been having discussions to see how FAO can use this data and analytical work to be able to identify which particular value chains in which particular areas would make meaningful sense in terms of one, bringing people out of poverty, two, ensuring security and nutrition, but also strengthening inclusion. Now, once we deploy our tools for data, then we are able to point to the government and say, in this particular area, say in Ondo and the neighboring areas, we can take kind of territorial approach. Actually, there is big potential, for example, to work on cocoa. That's not all. That we are using data. We're using spatial platforms that are able to map out these kinds of things, even the lower local government level. And then once we have that evidence, then what we do is, for us as FAO, we put together a kind of investment plan on a particular value chain that has been agreed with the government. And then we start running what we call round tables with different development partners, international financial institutions, facilitated by us, but ensuring that the key people on the table are there. And then we get commitments. Now, those could be national, based in the country, but it could also be international. We have been doing this in a number of countries. Nigeria is also one of the countries of the Hand Initiative. It's only starting. The other countries that have already now formulated their investment plans and have taken advantage of global meetings like the economic summits, where Davos and others to be able to lobby for finance, largely from private sector, but also from. So through the hand-in-hand initiative, I think we can be able to also bring in these resources in terms of our technical knowledge, but also in terms of our partnership building with our development partners, and more importantly, in helping you to put together an investment program on particular important projects. Now, as I wind up on this one, I just wanted, because when we were talking all along, I was just wondering, okay, so all these very important things, how are these put together? A kind of strategy, of the state. Does the state have, for example, long-term strategy, how we want to use agriculture to use contribute to economic growth in the state? Maybe that is something that they want to think about. It's something that FAO also helps a lot on because we support on policy, we support on strategies, we support legal framework. That's one of our areas of expertise, just in case that the state has not developed this, they want to consider this. If it's developed, that's great. Then that's great. What we see now all this discussion, how it fits within the long-term strategy for stage. But I would, if you want, to talk about a little bit about this issue of inclusion, like any other models that we can think about, including, of course, what they talked about. So, not quite covering the broad aspects of so, first, I think what you said is very clear. The kind of support, the modality, and what is now left, okay, is to put together, let's say, different facets that address specific thematic entry points. We take livestock, for example, we would need to discuss what are the options for those and what are the modalities of operationalizing those options. Maybe feasible, very possible to utilize or leverage private sector financing, where the option is agribusiness investment. FAO has a particular center dedicated to investment plans for the state to look at and look at the financing options for that investment. To look at as well other resources, the national development partners or national financial institutions and partners. In this case, we write that each sector which is specific is for the state and based on what is considered feasible in the most sustainable long-term. And that has to come, let's say, through the state. Ours is to provide these options at the table based on sound evidence, based on analytics, and based on forecasting that FAO is very much stated to provide. So I remember in last time in Ondo, the governor has made remarks. I know Ondo State government has been very vocal and proactive regarding the sustainability of livestock, which is
particularly what FAO also put in terms of providing an alternative for the settlement that is not going to be based on sentiment, but based on inclusivity, allowing every person, every entity that is willing to provide resources or to invest in the sector to be able to have a level playing field, to be able to have a sustainable program going forward. Sustainable in terms of political stability, in terms of technical efficiency, and in terms of value. And we believe Ondo State can really do this. And that's why we said realistically, it needs to be driven by the state itself. We can provide what options are available. We know at the federal level, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture is in discussion with the World Bank regarding agriculture. We knew that there would be about 20 states participating, but we don't know whether Ondo State will be part of the participating states and what it means in terms of what Fred said, the overall strategy for livestock in the state. If that's what Ondo State has already signed up for, then of course it would be an entry point. However, if Ondo State would like to pursue another track for livestock, for example, through the ranching option that His Excellency has just mentioned, then that can also be considered a feasibility study or a stakeholder mapping of who would be the anchor investor of these kinds of large-scale, commercially oriented, ranching approach. Because this obviously, from the global practices, is driven by the private sector entities. The national dairy policy is in the pipeline. This can be leveraged also to identify the key stakeholders. Sometimes there are discussions around, as Fred had said now, the hand in hand to see what are the entry points by states and what would be the best partnership where FAO can provide this matchmaking support, identify who would be the best investor or the best partner for this kind of activity, and then bring both of you to the table and discuss the terms and then shake the hands. So for me, this is what I see, because it's, the plans are very strategic, are very ambitious. As Fred has said, they need to be underpinned within a long-term sustainability plan that will be operational in the real sense of the word. The role of FAO here would be to catalyze, support in materializing these processes. And to be able to do that, as Fred indicated, require quite a bit of resources. FAO in itself has some resources which we are using, for example, to provide this ad hoc support on the feedlot. But it's small, as I indicated to the SA while we were Ondo. It's just analytic to just demonstrate something in reality. But the upscaling part needs to be handled by the states through internal resources or through other forms of financing that would be available to the states. And whatever you decide to go forward with, FAO would be there to make sure that you get the best out of technical and financial resources to ensure best value. I think that's what I'm going to say. This relates not only to the livestock, but to all the subsectors. As Your Excellency has, as you mentioned, in terms of what you can take advantage of the anti-funding, which is already gaining a lot of traction, key in specifically, and then we see what are the gaps, what are the constraints, and what would be the investment to release those constraints for investment specifically. And you can also again benefit from generating evidence if that is foreseen to be the case, because a lot of these kinds of issues are better discussed when we have concrete evidence by way of data, by way of analytics, which is what, for example, we have started with Lagos. When Lagos approached us they wanted an upgraded strategy for the coconut value chain. But it is not possible to propose a strategy because there are a lot of unknowns. The data around cocoa and the coconut, and its production and productivity in the state is quite dated. It's therefore not realistic to put together a forecasting plan based on data that is not reliable. So part of that is to update the data and to do a very robust analysis, which is what we are starting with. As Fred had indicated, Lagos is willing to go through with this kind of approach because it's more sustainable, it's more evidence-based. We will be able to see, even if we invest, where is the benefit of investment going to be captured in terms of return. And that will guide the state authorities, in better planning and better investment decisions. So I think this is what I can say. In all the lists of these stakeholders, these subsectors, FAO has the technicalities, has the contacts, and has the expertise, be it at the national level or at the global or regional level. We have this expertise, and we will be able to provide this support. The only other thing maybe which I mentioned lastly, we work and operate through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, which is our clearinghouse. So in whatever of these discussions we have with the subnationals, we need to bring on board the Federal Ministry of Agriculture as an entry point, just for their relative no objection, to be able also to catalyze the resources that they have to support these kinds of activities where those are available. For example, if you talk livestock, the Federal Department of Animal Husbandry Services is implementing a lot of programs in breed improvement, in pasture management, and so on and so forth. Where there are linkages or synergies, getting the ministry involved would also unlock those resources, to be deployed, particularly, for example, so that can also ensure more efficient use of the state resources, because there are these partnerships being built between the states and the federal, and also between other partners. So the idea centrally is to have a transformative partnerships where there is values for the states, for the farmers, for the operators, for everyone. So this is what I would say, Fred.
Thank you so much.
I would maybe end, I don't know, maybe you have an idea about how to proceed. Okay.
But before that, we will first need to listen to them. Just to add something small, when you talked about the Health Press World Bank funded opportunity that's coming up, one of the things FAO does is, of course, to advocate for some of these resources, because we engage very regularly with the Ministry of Agriculture, and we know what they're negotiating with who. So some of our advocacy work is to say, look, actually, we know that in this state, one of their priorities is area. Please include them as part of the focus states that we want to work with. So sometimes we do that locally. We know that many of these international financial institutions also approach us for technical support, for data, so we know what is coming. We talk to them as well. Now, there is also the African Development Bank, together with IFAD, planned special agro processing zones. I don't know whether Ondo is one of those that's identified, and for what, because then, in light of the special agro processing zones, financing that's likely to come into the country, then we will see how FAO can help you actualize it, because on the ground it has to be actualized. You need technical expertise and support for that to happen. Even when that discussion happens between you as a government, you can as well request that you would like FAO support. And then we can come in like that, the resources are there. Something else that I need also to mention is that we have set up a Center for Transboundary Animal Diseases. call it ECTA. ECTA is the Emergency Center for Transboundary Animal Diseases. Ideally to help laboratories, national laboratories, and even decentralized laboratories to be able to diagnose, to even make surveillance of some of these diseases that impact on livestock. So should that be an issue that comes up? Of course, they just come up. Sometimes you have with swine fever, poultry. If that happens, just let us know because we have that system now that is able to respond quickly and I think we've talked a lot from our side. We would like just to see if there are any reflections on your side before we identify some areas of going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I want to let's hear.
Uh, let me say, we indeed appreciate that it's going to. Through it, when we training at I want to traditional however, since they have a platform to they are demanding for the implementation of the benefits. As for the resources, we will discuss it. Organ. And, I believe we will, with the little we have in mind, presently we can proceed. What we will, in part of the take away from this or take home from this meeting, the interview when we are expecting you back in the state, so that we can do the practical aspects of it. Just as you said, we are equally committed to the use of private investors. As a matter of policy, this administration doesn't encourage government-owned ventures. What we are trying to do is to catalyze, just as a few. But then people can go somewhere and see something, acquire the knowledge, because a lot of our livestock officers were involved in the training, so that they can do step down training. So we are waiting that aspect. Then the agric minister was with us yesterday. He left this morning.
In Ondo.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Left this morning. And he did promise us during the 6 day, 1 or 2 things. He promises he on NLTP. We are deeply involved. We submitted our business plan. NLTP is here. I'll be speaking with Dr. Kosari. Our plan also on that is that we want the private sector led arrangement. So for now, we appreciate the intervention of FAO in terms of general livestock development. Starting with cattle and goat, the ruminants we are working on. Let that be the entry point. What we want to do or what we are looking forward to. And from what is on ground, the issue of breeding improvement. Our West African crop, that is the growth that is prevalent in our area in Southwest Africa, is in their need of improvement. I think we discussed that. So we want FAO to be critically assessed to see how we can step up or upgrade what we have presently in circulation so that other people can begin to benefit from it. So that way, sort of, the goods in circulation in the state are seriously suffering from inbreeding. So you see what the same offspring from the same mother causing the mother along the line, productivity has gone down and the growth rate is interactive. That is really situation. I will remember the first time, I don't know whether it was during your when you came or when the FAO immediate past the FAO contributed to the school. We talked about this our local state, which we said is almost going to extinction. I've been moving around looking for how to. I don't think we can now go to 10 states today. And they became very remote places. So it's a scheme to, if it's something that is very dear to us, looking for a way of improving on that particular and also all this program coming up at the Federal Ministry of Agri, they are pleased, so you don't know what about this. We basically promise that we will be enlisted in the next phase. Please, we want to solicit for your intervention for the NLTP because we know it's taking off the four states. That's right.
Yeah.
Four states. And I was told in this August, the flag off within Nasarawa state right. So the promise is that we will be among the next phase. We will be very glad to have that. I will discuss with Dr. Bishop when he was. We even want to carry out this feedlot training into food language so that some of our brothers from the northern part of the country that are doing open grazing can come and that one will be meant for them so that they can see the advantages in this arrangement. So that when they see that gradually the transformation will come. So that is our own strategy in that direction. So we are looking for that session that will be purely including language for the next and the owners of the next. That's in the state. AFDB, yes. If Mr. Hari has been at the forefront of that. We submitted we are participating fully in that work. Whatever support that you can give in that, because a lot of states are competing, and we know at the end of the day they will not stand with us. So any assistance in that direction will be very good. The hand-in-hand engagement strategy for arrangement is something we look at critically. Then, according to we follow all your tools of this, so that you can have something to work with here, so that we can have we can build on that arrangement. On irrigation, we are looking at, because it's like, although this year seems to be a little better than what we had last year in terms of rainfall, but to me, I often tell people, and we plant maize now without irrigation. It's like you are planning to commit suicide, or you are planning to fail. So it has become an imperative. It's something that we have to look at. And the way we are looking at this, and I saw that documentary about 2, 3 years, where people, I think it was in Kenya or Tanzania, they were being trained on how to make this little drip irrigation equipment locally. I saw it, and I saw one in Senegal, another in Senegal. So we can, so that our people doesn't need to go and break the bank before they can do little drip irrigation, either for vegetable or for maize or things like that. So that if we can have that type of training, we can bring our fabricators, our artisans together for such training, so that they can produce for farmers, and the cost will be relatively okay for the people. There's hatchery in the state. It's moribund for poultry. We are looking at for technical partner. To advise and possibly help to source equipment, and we'll be looking for private investor. But it seems as if we've not been able to make a headway in that direction. A bigger hatchery in Ibadan seems not to be happy with our move, because it will amount to splitting their market. But it's something we need, because our people have to travel to Oyo State to bring in their own chips. When you look at the cost of transportation, to and fro, and the stress on the children. So it is not very good for us. It increases the cost of production, and the loss is too. On arrival, some will die because of transportation. So all these, whatever will be done in it, whatever paper we need to put together, we are participating in National Dairy Policy Review. We have the documents for our livestock team in the state. We are working on taking out the constitution. I'm sure that tomorrow we will come to the best policies. We want to make this happen, that you should make special case for us, because within financial farming, I've been able to maneuver, discuss with a lot of directors in the livestock sector. Yeah. And I know there's a particular something they did in Oyo for good. If we have support from FAO, I'm sure it will be replicated in the state. If you add your voice to the little push that we are making, I'm sure the state will have the state will benefit from that intervention. Generally, whatever could be done through other international agencies, as the deputy doctor did request when he was making his remarks, would be highly appreciated. We will go back home, look at the details, and look at different entry points where we are, so that we can get back to you with documents. And on the final note, still on the issue of the forest. But I know the first time FAO came, there was this baseline report. So we talked about temperature, the state of the state forest. I'm very glad whatever we can get from this end, so that we can, when we were discussing the last time, we were told we were to be given some equipment, which eventually did not come. But the parameter of environment took it over. and we're told about maybe another movement or something like that. So whatever will happen in that direction, we're very glad about it. The government is very much concerned about speaking of the forest. I want to put the record straight, develop the long-term strategy, both short and long-term strategy to get back the forest and get things done.
Let me quickly add this. When Mr. Abubakar was making his comment, he emphasized that FAO is a global institution, national institution. Everything you relate a part, the local body, in this case, Federal Ministry of Agriculture, so that there will be no objection start before you can even proceed forward to engage state. So it's in that, on that that I want to also say that knowing us already, engaging us on this state, and your word will be taken very seriously. Your positions, because we have access to a lot of information, and your organization is being held at very high esteem, and you always put the information out as it is. So working with us and all this technical support you are doing things right can also, as like I said earlier, get the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to look into the state direction that we can get all that we need from them and also from you, because you still need to get their input in terms of the validation or whatever it is, the objection. That is one aspect that I want to say. Also, the minister, like I said, was in the state for the commissioning of the National Secretariat of Co-Farmers Association of Nigeria. So we made some promises that were there because I received him on behalf of Mr. Governor. And right there, he whispered to me. I also made it over that Ondo State will be included in the next phase of our appeal, so that we can ensure that that is done. Then the rural access road, that we include that in the budget, next year's budget for those things, so that access road and electricity will be some of the challenges we face farm to market. Very important. Yeah. That is going to also support in that for the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and support the roads, access. Very important. It's some kind of enabling infrastructure for us, yeah, to support our agriculture sector. Yeah. That's apart from other things, yes. That's yes.
Thank you so much for support on this state, and I appreciate what a few things for me to buttress the point of starting with what I consider the most important project towards we have special growth project with each of them that exists. However, a lot of things have been made to be one of the foremost states starting. And their own idea of, state readiness is different from our own idea of state readiness. In terms of the things that they told us to fulfill, we've done most of it, which is the environmental social impact assessment. That's the stuff we submitted to them. We also require the concept of the business plan, which we did over a COVID period last year. That was also submitted to them. However, they now tasked the state to do a detailed engineering feasibility study, which would entail mapping out the entire, SAPZ and what will be where. And that's that's not really it's a big project. However, they appointed, well, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture appointed so-called consultants, and I've seen the work they've done in some other states, which is not right, very rush. It's very generic. As far as I'm concerned, I won't touch with the batch for the farmer plants here. AFD might be okay with it for the process because the crush. However, my appeal to FAO is it possible for us to sit down together and craft out a solution to do a detailed study, because if you're going to invest in hundreds of billions of naira or $10 million, you need to know exactly what you invest in and how you want to generate revenue from the project over time. And in terms of inclusion as well, how to implement into the project, into the project as well. Also the community where we will bring in the project, it's possible to bring them in as smaller plantation around the SAPZ that would actually fund this or provide raw materials. But it's one thing for you to design a very well done infrastructure of the SAPZ. What about the supply to the SAPZ itself? So one of the very critical important things, which I believe a detailed study will bring up. I've seen studies from other states. I will not touch it, as I said. It's good to do things very quickly to access funding, but there's also a place to do something properly as well, to be able to spend this funds correctly. So that's what we're struggling with now. I mean, for us, is it possible to rely on technical support to do a detailed engineering feasibility studies, even in the 2-3 month period? The wet season will soon go, so the states and the private sector funding actually funding the environmental social assessment. So that to me, I think it's perfect. I've been an environmentalist myself in my past life. So it's to look at this and a few things that sort of works together in this project. Investing is the land use management program. It actually ties into a lot of things that we're doing, because we do things around forestry and use of land as well. A lot of pharmaceutical companies now have kinds of powerful land to develop all up under the Red Book scheme, the all-up city that we have in the state, first of its time in Nigeria. How do you make use of say modern practices, not just to do land clearing, do this everywhere and stuff like that. The SDG goals is to be met at some point. We expect to climate change. Do work. This is why what's fighting South Asian countries who are big more part, like Malaysia, Indonesia, who are millions of population land that's already just to plant. So how do you do properly? Also, cocoa, same thing. Those two tree crops. Those are very important things. And also, for us not to be overwhelmed with so many projects and so many things, it's impossible to have a core technical team on both sides, both the FAOs and outside, to streamline projects on basis of priority. What is to be done in the next 6 months? What are putting priority should be one which I believe those things are quite important. I'll leave it to Mr. Fred to talk to us about this part of next steps. It's just for me to bring out this facts. And also in terms of the National Trust Fund, you know, not committing people with His Excellency to anything here, but I believe that that's a very good way to actually um, show other development partners or donor partners, even private sector, that you're actually serious. We have a national fund to develop projects, not necessarily to fund projects to start. Because project development is the most important thing. You don't develop a project, you can't fund the project. If you come to me to say you want to do cocoa, for example, and you want me to help you raise money, I mean, you're asking me, oh, is it not like give you one big document? Well, actually, yes. I need to know exactly what you need to do. Start to finish, what your projection, what your forecast are. And now we intend to also do it to make it happen. So those are the things that I believe that we all need to sort of work together as a team. I like working with technical agencies who support rather than a typical money guy like here to be a wall back, because the most important thing is to develop the project, then money will follow the project.
They will come to us.
Exactly. I was going to say that. So for me, I'd rather be sitting here with my bosses in the room for us to cook up the project properly, even if it might take some time. Then we can now call up a stakeholder meetings, bring all the donors on board, giving them facts and figures, which entices them to actually want to put their money behind it. A lot of places in the country suffer from disbursement of money. So we have a project, we can disburse. The reason why they can disburse is they don't know the next steps. And you know the next steps, you don't get no objection. So those are very critical things that I've understood. This is not an inaugural meeting, but I will call it an inaugural meeting with the technical team that will drive this process to a point where everyone is happy. That they will say, we supported what those that increase revenue by 300%. The residents are happy at us. Social image levels are also increased. You can see viable, visible project that's sustainable, that meets also SDG goals as well. So those are things that I believe provide was big enough that I'm starting to
Thank you so much.
And maybe just this, you mentioned the inclusion of the private sector in already we have set up a pool as stakeholders for factor. I work with the experts.
Yeah.
So something some of them we don't go participate. How do you do it?
I mean, we can mention it further. Yeah.
Because the last
Yeah, because it's up to handles that, that's why.
Each mention.
I guess that there will be more discussions also at the technical level to find solutions to some of these. For me, I just want to point out one thing before we get to this. One is what you thought about irrigation. Irrigation in this era is really very sad that we depend on the rain. Okay. It's even worse if you actually have water resources in your own state. And yet we are saying, oh, the drought has hit us, we cannot produce. Honestly, we should be able to harness the water resources that we have in whatever way to ensure that we can do irrigation. One of the things we've been discussing with the Ministry of Water Resources, again, is on this issue of irrigation. And trying to see how the ministry can put in additional resources to be able to support the development of simple irrigation technology, including what you talked about, publication, simple drip irrigation. We ourselves have committed to put together some technical cooperation program resources funds very little funds that are within our own needs. As long as the ministry is willing to match or double that, then we work with that. And in principle, they are okay. The minister is very happy with the proposal that FAO was giving and the funds that FAO was committing. Of course, at that point in time, when we were discussing this proposal at a different stage, this is very important for all states. And it's something that we will continue to advocate for. Now, one of the things FAO does, it's just unfortunate to have the COVID situation. FAO actually has a program which we call South-South Cooperation Program. The South-South Cooperation basically identifies countries with particular technologies, simple technologies, that can help smallholder farmers to improve their way of doing agriculture. And brings those people or takes you to those countries to learn from what those people are doing, if it's just the practices, or if it's fabricating tools, or whatever you have identified. But we had identified irrigation as one of those things. We know there are quite a number of countries, especially in the Sahel, very close to us here, who are doing very well in irrigation, despite their environment. They've tamed the environment very well. But this we shall continue. So I hope that the situation improves. Sometimes it's easier to see actual practice, how these people doing things. They bring back the knowledge. So South-South Cooperation is one of FAO's programs of ensuring knowledge of technologies passed from one country to another in different things. The other one is on the productivity. Then you talk about improving productivity of agriculture. FAO is very concerned about productivity in all our areas, whether it's livestock, whether it's fisheries, even in fisheries, we're still talking about improved fingerlings, fish fingerlings that can be provided to farmers. We talk about livestock, we talk about crops, we're also talking about seeds. And then the practices that go along with that. So this is an area that is key to us. We may not have the resources immediately, but it's an area that they will work on. Finally, I think was a request around the need for a feasibility study for the area of special processes. Now, I don't know how the Ondo has looked at this, but in some states which we have had discussions on this issue, they found that certain states have even identified what kind of value chains they want already, where they want now the special agro-processing zones to really focus. For example, there are those that are saying, no, we want these zones to actually just look at the beef value chain or the dairy sector value chain or the whatever. That helps a lot also in the planning and in the studies that follow, because then you know for sure if you want to concentrate on beef, then you know what is required for beef, both in terms of the production, but also on the other value chain stages that go along with that, the processing, the kind of storage that you require. So all this becomes much easier to then package together. First of all, to do the analysis, but also to package together into an investment program. But if it's general, it's also okay, because then you may want to use this to tap into quite a number of areas. Because basically, if you are setting up infrastructure, that infrastructure will be helpful in a number of things. But it's also good to have something in mind. That you're talking about. And that for me underlines the need for wider partnership. Even us as FAO alone cannot help you to do a feasibility study on this, because we may concentrate on areas that are important for us or in our areas of mandate. As we know, it's a value chain kind of approach, so it also has components that we may not be able to deal with. People who are really involved in processing and processing are different from us. Then you find all these kinds of things. But it's good to have this discussion go. I like the idea of having a team together, to talk about this. What I didn't hear is whether you have a strategy. Because again, when you were talking about the core team, you were saying how do we prioritize, to help us to prioritize the kinds of different investments that we want to do. But that comes with your strategy as a state. This is for us our strategy in the next 5 years. This is what we want to do. We just fall in and say, okay, this is your strategy. These are your priorities. Then let's work on those priorities. Let's do some more analysis on those priorities, whether they're feasible in that period of time. Then let's work out an investment program. Because after the analytics, we can do the investment program. And this will be very important also for attracting the private sector. Because without a strategy, you can't attract it. You start off with this strategy, and then the strategy, which it talks about, it identifies particular priority value chains that we want to do. Then we can help to generate evidence and data and analysis on that value chain, and help you also to put together an investment program, the best of which then you can engage is the sector and the rest. So I think that we can do a lot, but we also need to have this clearer picture where we are. If it's not clear, we can help you to clarify that picture and then generate evidence. In terms of going forward, for me, what I have noted, and add, of course, the area of the unilateral trust fund, because I see that as an entry point and as a good starting point for all of us to put together our ideas. The trust fund, as we said, can help in doing these feasibility studies, the analytics that we need to generate data. If we need, we have identified the value chain, like we were talking about livestock, we can do the value chain analysis, for example, for beef or for dairy, whatever we want to do, and provide recommendations. And then we can also develop investment funds out of that, on the basis of which they can also facilitate dialogue and roundtables in private sector and other development partners who are interested in that particular value chain. But we have to have an investment plan so that have those dialogues. But before the investment plan, you also need to do analysis. So all these things can be part and parcel of the unilateral trust fund. Now, for us, that's the process also that takes time. Here we are talking about it from a technical point of view. We can put together a proposal for the unilateral trust fund. We also have another process within FAO which goes into now the legal aspects. Now, mind you that we're dealing with a subnational entity, which is the state government, and not the federal government. Within FAO, we have those processes. That's where I was mentioning that the federal ministry here of agriculture will be central, because we give a no objection letter for our legal office now to say, okay, let's develop something. So it takes time, and the idea will start with it. The second thing I see is that on our side, we shall explore the opportunity for UNIDO to come into this discussion through the 3 ADIs that I talked about. We'll have a meeting with them, explore their, first of all, interest, but secondly, available resources, however little, so we can work together to support your efforts on the cocoa, particularly. This is about cocoa. Other one is the hand-in-hand initiative. I don't know how we bring on those state in the discussion now for the hand-in-hand.
I think we would talk about the trade arrangement. So we talked about the UTF. So the UTF indicatively would highlight the entry points where investment plans are. So this will feed into the hand as one of the priority areas for the hand. That is specifically the target the stable fund. Yeah. And then in the next round table, we can invite the state government as well, yeah, to join participate in discussion. And maybe before that, we may need to make a presentation, even if it virtual
Yeah.
to the state government and
Understand.
to just understand and then to bring them up to speed what is done and now the entry points for Ondo and how that is being explained to the whole impact activities. This will be the three-stage entry points that will explore.
So the UTF here is
Yeah, the UTF would be key because it would be confirming what are the priorities and what are the gaps and the needs that needs to be identified before we talked about the business plan. And because once we have that, then it becomes clear the hand in hand would prioritize this the entry points and the partners and the markings that need to be done will then comment.
So the other one, of course, which we shall continue doing is the advocacy that I talked about. Now I've just talked about we need to we can do a wider UN-wide advocacy because we know that there are other entities within the UN who are involved in particular things. You have UN women, for example, working on women issues. So if you're talking about inclusion, then we can bring them on board and say, "Look, guys, can we work together on bringing your expertise with that inclusion of women and young and the others also." So we can do that. That's more on our side. We can do it. Keep talking with our colleagues in the UN. The federal government level, you asked about the energy, we can help also to put our voice. Yes, the FAO was instrumental in developing the energy. We have been also piloting this implementation in 2 states now. Two states, in Kaduna and in the Niger State. And the kind of lessons that we are getting from there are very useful also for the federal government. They've been actually talking to us. So if this we can once they talking to them about this.
Do you mind elaborating on the part that you're doing this state? What is it?
Okay, so maybe I could
But it really was one of the technical aspects of the just think from the religious policy. These aspects. But in principle, there are 2 track approaches. There's an approach where the leadership, the lead is coming from the private sector. So the government should conduct enablers so that now if you take the developer, they allocated a grazing reserve based on what was obtained in the past as grazing, gazetted grazing reserve. They have anchor investor, that's Allah, which is a dairy company. So Allah is establishing a commercial oriented dairy farm with exotic meats and so on. So in private sector, it's there, they know how to sustainably manage because the motivation is for now on the side, because the milk to be processed by that farm is much more in quantity than what the farm would produce. But now the remaining part of the grazing reserve is being parceled to pastoralists or any other farming house who is interested in starting a business. That's the inclusive part that Fred was talking about. So when you restrict it to a certain group, then it becomes exclusive. Now the criteria is open. Pastoralists and non-pastoralists alike. The priority is to pastoralists because they are traditionally known to dominate that kind of livelihood. So the government is obtaining facility through the central bank commercial agricultural program. So they resettle the pasture, the magic part of the pasture by providing land within the grazing area demarcated to them and providing also improved breed. Each household will receive 4 lactating cows based on exotic, and then they give them shelter. FAO provides technical training to those pastoralists on how to manage those animals terms of provision of extension, also to government extension that who will support the location. You know, it's also training on how to manage pasture, how to plant, improve pasture, you know, grasses and other plants, on improve milking and dairy hygiene and other related services needed to sustain the entire ecosystem. Now, how to say, the ALA as a private entity will uptake milk from the neighboring smallholder farm. So that's why I said it's a twin track approach. One based on purely private sector, but the other based on smallholder farmers who needs to formalize and organize and are anchored on the expertise and the uptaking power of the private sector. So that's how the model works.
That's the backward integration.
Yes.
Yeah.
So exactly, more of the backward integration, but in a twin track approach. Neither the context is slightly different. We have two sites. One is Bobby, it's entirely commercially oriented. About 5 big players have been already allocated, which is about 15,000 hectares. Then, yeah, the demo is 8,000. So 2,000 is allocated to ALA, 5,000 to 1,000 farmers that are smallholder. Now, in Niger, we are operating on 2 sites. The commercial side, as I said, is only 50,000, entirely parcel to the private sector, about 5. Then the smallholder farmers are located in another grazing reserve because Niger has the largest grazing reserve by land size in the country. So Sheyi Grazing Reserve, I think, is about 5,000. So it's entirely dedicated to smallholder farmers. But the approach is similar in terms of settling them, in terms of giving them, how to say, better producing animals, and in terms of the land type. But in Niger, this has not gained a lot of traction. Kaduna, I think it has gained more traction, the allies on side, and so on and so forth. We discussed yesterday with CBA because they have provided the facility for the NLTP in both Niger and East. And they also lamented the same issue with Niger, that there hasn't been a lot of progress, particularly from the commercial side. And they want to see how FAO would come into to identify the challenges that is being faced by the OB grazing reserve operators, and we'll see what mitigation can be proposed to upscale the pace of progress. So that's the two main cases that we are dealing with. On our own, within the framework of integrated approach to building peace, we're also trying out other models in Benue, in Nasarawa, and Taraba states. But all with different varying touches of technical modification to suit the local context. The major lesson from NLTP now is that it should be flexible, it should be adapted to the needs of the state. It should be inclusive, and at the top of it, there should be a conscious plan to integrate them. Because one of the major issues is that the livestock, let's say, owning community is perceived to be one, and that any attempt to settle them within a largely different group has compatibility issues. So you have to build in that process a plan that will integrate, because in the end, you are not talking about two groups of people who are producers. No, they relate within the entire ecosystem. Their children go to school. They have fields, they have markets. So how do you connect all these things? By not just focusing on the business of livestock only. So that's the major takeaway. Integration. How do they coexist together without seeing them as, alien or foreign or resettled? That's what the conversation has been short. And we've seen that in one of the earliest resettlement schemes called Duga is there since the 75, but the community is still very pure. One kind of people living largely or surrounded by another group of ethnic, who always constantly perceive them as outside. Almost 40 years, after. So there is no conscious process to integrate both of these two groups. So that's the major,
There's integration as well as accommodating inclusion of all different partners. They are very good lessons to learn. I think even us, we're learning these lessons as we go through them and share all the lessons as we go along. That's one of the things that FAO does very well. But the Excellency, we really want to appreciate you. As I said, this is just the beginning. For sure, we'll have more opportunities to interact and discuss. As I said before, we need now to put things on the ground. I heard that we're expecting a follow-up on the people project completion.
The mission is being planned, the second mission, and the training that is needed to be conducted is also important. The team, as I said, they are very busy in Kaduna as I have some trainings, but once we get the flexibility, they will communicate to the next dates.
So that's the pipeline. As well, I also look forward to another visit. As I say, love to be more in the field. The challenge of our own movements. We have lots of restrictions and circumstances. Once in a while. But that will change. Our regards to the government. Definitely we understand. That's the problem at all. We're so happy to interact with you anytime.
Thank you very much. Doctor, two people on this. Oh, thank you. So the ones we have done already, and the proposed one, the opportunity is there. And always have you to discuss with you readiness. Very important. We value that readiness to support.
Been asked to hand over one of our flagship documents. So this one marks the celebration of our 40 years in Nigeria. It's largely the kinds of materials that we give, books and knowledge and information. To you, to the Excellency. Then I understand everybody else will have theirs. Yes, yeah, sure. Okay, so I think okay. I think they will take them. Yes. Because it's lunch, we packed some snacks for you. Okay. Yes, group photo? Yes. You can take it. At the lobby. This guy is not the best place.
Whatever you did it.